Welcome, bet riders around the world. My name is Gary Solomon, and you're watching the Laid Back Bike Report. Well, I'm very excited to have y'all with us today. Let me tell you about what's coming up in today's show. We have Honza with us with the Recumbent news, and Honza's provided a nice report of most of what's happened in January in the recumbent world, so I'm excited to see what he's got to tell us there. And then our main segment this month is Jason Livingston, who is CEO of EBO, Electric Bike Outfitters in Denver. And we as in Larry Seidman and I had the great opportunity to visit him in Denver at the facility, and we got a nice tour, look around, and Jason did some amazing demos for us, tearing down a couple different types of motors, talking extensively about how to maintain these e-assists. So I think it's something that anybody that is either interested in getting an e-assist or has one right now will be looking forward to seeing as much as I am. So we'll have that coming up, and a few announcements and a little quiz actually during the show as well. So we hope you'll stay with us for all of that. But first, let's meet our crew. We've got a really good crew with us today, and our guest as well. Did we lose? There's Peter and Honza. Okay, so Larry Seidman in Colorado Springs. Larry's doing the directing today. Hi, Larry.
Hi, Gary. It's fender season out in Colorado this weekend. Melting snow.
You're not talking about the guitar fender. You're talking about putting it on a trike. Okay, I gotcha. And in Raymond, Mississippi, it is Trey Burgoyne doing our media today. Hi, Trey.
Howdy. It's what's this snow you mentioned? It's 68 degrees here and sunny.
Yeah, our snow is gone actually right now, but we had plenty of it, pal. So I'm glad you're continuing to hold that against us. We appreciate that. All right. And then where are we going next? How about Peter in Alfred Station, New York? Is Peter Stull, the bicycle man himself. Peter, I'm glad you're with us today.
Good to be here. It was 3 degrees when I got up this morning, but now it's 23, so it's headed the right direction.
There we go. Improvement. That's what we're looking for. And Honza, the recumbent news guy himself in the Czech Republic. Honza, I'm so glad you're with us today.
Hello, everybody. I don't think it's needed to mention the temperature here in the Czech Republic because I know it only in the Celsius.
Right. And then everybody's going to run to Google and try to convert it and all. So I hope the weather's good there, Honza. Thanks for eliminating that possibility. And joining us after quite a hiatus, we haven't seen him on the show for a while, Larry Varney in Kentucky. Larry, hi.
Hi. I'm glad to be here. I'm looking out the window. Our temperature's warmed up here, but I still have some patches of ice in my driveway. I mean, that's the trouble with the north-facing sloping driveway. It's been a real challenge just getting up and out. So anyway, glad to be here.
All right. Maybe a plea to put studs on the tires of his trike. I'm not sure what that was about, but Larry, we're glad
I've got them on my shoes.
Well, that's primary. That's important. So, all right, guys, let's have a good show, and we'll move on at this point then to talk about the live chat. So, guys, we have a live chat running both on Facebook and on YouTube with the webcast today. So please avail yourself of that. You can make comments. You can ask questions of our guests or panelists. You can talk amongst yourselves, and let us know where you are watching from. Always great to see where folks are that are with us on the show. And how can you support the Laid Back Bike Report? If you like what we do here, we appreciate your support. You can do so by liking us on Facebook, subscribing to us on YouTube. You can click the little white eye up there that's going to appear, take you to the laidbackbikereport.com website where you can see our past shows, see what's coming up. You can buy a hat. you can really learn a lot more about what we do. So you can join us there all month long in between shows and find out what we do. And the Patreons, become one of those. That's a great way to support us. You can do so for as little as $1 a month. All right. We are also supported in a big way by our sponsors, so let me tell you about them right now. First of all, we have TerraCycle. Why sit up when you can lay back? TerraCycle engineers the recumbent essentials to take your ride to the next level. Find us at t-cycle.com. And Trailside Trikes, a fine recumbent trike shop on the Withlacoochee Trail in Florida. And TerraTrike Green Speed. Your vision, whatever it is, TerraTrike has a trike to take you there. And Green Speed cutting-edge designs create performance through Aussie ingenuity. And Laid Back Cycles, the top USA dealer for TerraTrike and the premier source for Catrike, Ice, and Green Speed. We give you the freedom to ride. And Bicycle Man, where you can find new and used recumbent trikes and bikes. We're located in Alfred Station, New York, and have over 100 bents in stock and ready to try. So why wait? Come ride, then decide. And Azub, we unveiled our new visual identity at CycleCon this year. We're now shining out into the world with a neon yellow and blue color scheme and the words, "The Joy of Riding." Test ride one of our trikes with the new small A Trike track logo, and you'll feel that joy instantly. And Connecticut Yankee Peddler. We feature multiple brands of trikes, including electric assist models. Test rides and Southern Iowa hospitality are always available at our megastore in Chariton. And we're very excited to welcome a couple of new sponsors as of this month. First of all, Stein Trikes, where comfort meets performance, engineered for adventure and built for the journey. Check out stein-trikes-us.com to learn more. And Honza Bikes. Come see us on Trike Alley at the Philly Bike Expo in the PA Convention Center on March 8th and 9th. We have recumbents, cargo bikes, hand cycles, tandems, and trikes for all ages and abilities, including the new Cat Diesel 1. Test rides will be available. All right, guys, so let's get into it. First of all, as I mentioned earlier, I was visiting Colorado a couple of weeks ago and had a chance to visit Angletech. My pal Kelvin Clark is there. And Trey, pop up this picture. Kelvin showed Larry and I around, saw a lot of interesting things, but this was really interesting. So I'm going to make a little quiz out of this. If you're watching, have a good look at this picture. This is a Catrike Dumont, as most of you will be able to identify. But I'm going to ask a question on the live chat for you guys to respond to. Why is this a special Catrike Dumont? What's unusual about it? And then how do you think it's being used there at Angletech? So this was an idea that Kirk, the amazing wrench there at Angletech in Colorado Springs, came up with. And we saw it. Kelvin showed it to us. So tell us what's unusual and how it's used there at Angletech. We're going to revisit this at the end of the show, and we'll see if we can find a couple winners. So great. All right. With that, then, let's move on to the recumbent news from Honza. As I said in the opening here, he supplied us with an interesting news report that we're going to show you right now.
Hello everyone, Honza Gala from Recumbent.news here, once again with a monthly summary of what has happened in the world of recumbent bikes. This time from, say, January 2025. It is going to be kind of a summary of what I have posted on Recumbent.news. So if you are interested in any of these topics, you can go to Recumbent.news and you will find an article there. So I will start with a topic that or an event that has happened at the end of 2024 in the last December. It was the Oliebollentocht. I probably didn't pronounce it correctly, but it is I think the largest or one of the largest velomobile gatherings that is annual. It happens every year at different place in Netherlands. This time it was in Rotterdam. There were over 100 velomobiles riding together. So a very interesting event and really worth to watch the videos from there if you are into velomobiles, at least a little bit. Another topic would be about velomobiles as well, this time about Velomobile NL, the Dutch manufacturer of velomobiles. There are a lot of things going on with this company. They stopped working together with Velomobile World from Romania, so Velomobile World won't produce the velomobiles for them, so they are currently seeking for a new manufacturer, and it seems that they will solve the issue in the next weeks. However, one of the results, but not only a result of the Romanians stopping the production for them, but overall lower demand, is that they stopped producing the Quest, which has been something like the Volkswagen Beetle in the velomobile world. They have produced over 1,000 of them over the years. So I interviewed Allard Jacobs about the history and the development related to the Quest, at least to the one you know. And there is an article, the interview has been published on Recumbent News at the beginning of January. Another article is about them celebrating 25 years, and my cousin Eva made a very nice video describing the history of Velomobile NL, showing all the models, starting with the before the company was founded, starting with the Elevator and then the Sea Elevator and then the Quest, and then going over all those Mangos and Stradas and Quest XS and Snooks and Snook L and Quattro Velo. And at the end they kind of revealed that they are going to start the production of the Quest 3.0 or 3 as they call it right now, so the next evolution, and they want to start the production this year. So a very nice video, which you don't see that often in the world of recumbents. The third topic then is that the European HPV Association has once again published an online magazine, the one issue of the magazine EU Supino they publish every year. It is in English, and it is a very nice summary of different events and also, you know, some of the velomobiles and their development is covered there, and some recumbent tours and other interesting topics. So if you want to have even more recumbent related stuff to read, additionally to the recumbent news, you can download the EU Supino from their webpage, and you can find the link in my magazine as well. We work together, we kind of share some of the articles, so this is a nice cooperation, and I like to promote it as well. I have also published 2 videos on the Recumbent News YouTube channel. It has been the one with Matt Gallard. You know him as thanks to his Gyro Nation YouTube channel, and we discussed the topic, say, why to ride recumbent trikes, and mostly the advantages of riding the recumbent trike, but also we covered also some of the disadvantages.
And then it was stable, and so for making videos, you know, I can hold a camera, and I even got all my gearing on one hand, so I can shift, I can steer, and I can brake with one hand, and the other hand can fly a drone, can make a video, to do whatever. So
you can watch the video and get our opinions on this topic. Another interview I did was with our master, Gary Solomon. If I'm not mistaken, Laidback Bike Report celebrates 10 years by this Laidback Bike Report, in fact. Or will it be next week? Maybe maybe Gary will let us know. So I published a video, or I published an interview with Gary.
I don't run after the algorithm. I want to do what I want to do, and basically it involves talking to people in longer form. Yep. It's probably not the best practice for getting all the views, but I think at least for historical purposes, someone could go back, and people do, and find out about that person. I'm not going to do that in 10 minutes. So, right.
So if you want to see Gary being interviewed, you have a great opportunity on Recumbent.news YouTube channel. I have also updated the list of the recumbent riding groups with a huge help of Steve, a recumbent community member. So we now have over 70 recumbent riding groups listed on the webpage on Recumbent.news in that article. And so if you are interested in riding with other people, you can get some contacts or links to the Facebook groups mostly there. It is mostly the US stuff where riding in groups is way more popular than in Europe or other parts of the world. But still there are some inspiration where to get additional info about different riding events also in Europe. And finally, the latest article I published is an interview with James Coxon, world record holder in different trike disciplines. Is a known person also thanks to his activity on social networks and racing. He has been racing recumbents for years now, quite successfully. So if you are interested in his recumbent riding career and the way he trained and so on and so forth, there is a very nice interview with him on Recumbent.news. And that's all for today. Enjoy the rest of the Laidback Bike Report and see you next time. Bye.
All right, Honza. Oh, has he frozen up there? He might have. He's holding his chin. Oh, you're back. There you go. Honza, thanks so much. It was a great Recumbent.news update there for us. James Coxon, first of all, what an amazing guy he is. And a recent connection, of course, that you're very well aware of. He's now riding 2 wheels. He's riding a Slyway. So Stefano, I'm sure, is very excited to see that. And we're looking forward to seeing James continue to compete at the high level that he's been doing in the past. And I wish him a lot of success with that. So great with that. Yes, you mentioned, and we haven't really said anything here, that this, in fact, is our 10-year anniversary show. So we started in February of 2015. That was not much of a show that particular month, but it's what got us started. So Honza, thank you very much for remembering that. It's been a wonderful ride for us, literally and figuratively. I love doing the show. Thank you for doing the interview last summer and showing that to everyone. If you can stomach it, watch that interview as well. But I think Matt's is probably more interesting. But Honza, great work there as always. Anything to add? Any updates since you sent that to me a few hours ago?
No, I don't think so. I'm glad it's really 10 years today. So keep up the good work and thank you for that.
Yeah, well, thanks for contributing so much over the years as well, Honza. A lot of it credit goes to you as well. So, all right, pal, I will let you get back to what you were doing, and we're going to move on then with the major segment of the show. And this is an interview, a tour, a look at teardowns and maintenance of e-assist motors for your trike with Jason Livingston at EBO in Denver. So, Larry, without further ado, let's jump right into it. Guys, let's step inside here and talk to Jason about the EBO motors. So he's going to be here in a second, I'm sure. What's going on? Hi, Jason. Gary from the Laid Back Bike Report. We're here to...
Heard you were coming.
Yeah.
No soliciting, please. Thank you.
What? Guys, we're here in Denver, Colorado at EBO, Electric Bike Outfitters, to talk to Jason. Jason has a series of motors for your bikes and trikes that I think you will be interested in seeing. We're going to talk about how you can maintain them, what's inside of them, how they're installed, and how you can make sure that the motors you buy are quality. So let's step inside and talk to Jason right now. Jason, thanks for having us.
Oh, it's great to have you, Gary.
Okay, so I thought we would kick it off maybe with a tour of the facility. Can you take us around and show us what all is in the building here?
Yeah, we sure can. So kind of starting out here, this is our Nick brand e-bikes. These are all for our local market here in Colorado. We drop them all off to the local shops, pre-built and ready to go. We have two stations here that are set up that we grab the motors, set them up stations, true them, hook up all the equipment, the bins. If it's outside controller, grab their controller. If it's an integrated controller, grab it. You can see we have dozens of wire lengths. So if it's a super, super long bike, we got really long component cables. Or if it's something that's super short, we have a lot shorter cables. I think at this point we have around a dozen of each motor cable and component cables. Then pedal assist devices, lots of different types of pedal assists. I think we have something like 10 different pedal assists at this point to hook up. And then the next thing you get into is all the different Trike and Recumbents components, everything from like T-cycle mounts to our IPAS system that replaces the idler pulley, chargers, and all sorts of extensions. All those things get grabbed for whatever type of bike it's going on and gets put on the stations and tested all together, make sure everything works properly together. So then we move all those components over here and start installing everything, getting it prepped for the bike that it's going on. And then the next area that we move from is the battery testing station. So we can test 2 on this station, 2 on this station, and another 4 over here. And the batteries all get tested. 100% of the batteries going out the door get tested and verify that they are a good battery. and they're also UL approved. Before we test it, we just do a secondary test to make sure everything is still top notch. So you'll see also quite a few stands for bikes. So a lot of this is for local market, for local bike shops. We'll do installs on electric bikes. We'll also prep all of our Nick bikes here before they go out to local market.
Okay. And then it looks like you have an array of trikes here. So
some of these are demos, but some of them also for local bike shops that we're doing installs for.
Larry, yeah, come on down and do a run. I got one of the Avenue trikes here. Okay. And then the racks here you have.
Usually these are pretty full batteries right now since it's winter. Inventory is fairly low. We'll start building it back up into the spring. But these on the top, it's all rack batteries. And then as you come around backside of the shop, torque tester for our motors to verify their torques before they go out the door. And then also we do a lot of testing on the RPMs of all of our motors before we go out the door, make sure they're right. This is all parts for mid-drive systems. So when you order a mid-drive system, parts get pulled depending on, if you need super long cables or short cables, parking brakes, non-parking brakes, hydraulic brakes. Yeah, we've actually started doing a few different things where we need a drill. We've been putting torque sensors into a lot of stuff, which requires drilling out the bottom bracket. And then as you come around the backside of all the racks, shelves are a little empty right now, but this is where we get to build all the motors, box them up, and pull them out as we need it. So, your 700Cs, then you go down to the 26s, it ends with the 20s.
And shipping down here, yes?
Yeah, so as they pull, you'll see today, as you're here, these are motors getting ready to go out. They just got done prepped and tested. So they'll get boxed up and shipped out to the bike shops.
All right. Well, thanks for the tour there, Jason. And let's start taking a little bit closer look at what it is that you do here on an individual basis for the motors and testing and stuff.
All right, good.
We're going to actually do some surgery on the different kinds of motors and tear them apart. Let's see what's inside of them. We'll try to get a good look, and maybe you can describe for us what it is we're looking at.
All right. The most important thing that if you're bike mechanic, you know that you rubber gloves when you're dealing with motors and wearing black. There usually is black grease or white grease. You just get it all over you. So we'll start off with, I'll take this guy apart and kind of show you a little bit of maintenance that's recommended on hub motors over time and some of the things that can fail in them over time. So one of the most important things a lot of people don't do, you're going to take all this hardware off. And the reason you're going to take all the hardware off is when you open up the motor, if the hardware is on there, it can actually knock out the bearings. So there's a lot of different ways to pop it open. Use a hammer. Some people use a 2x4 to kind of drop it on. You don't want to drop it on a nice table because you basically have this nice steel axle. We have a little rubber mat that we drop them on. Embarrassing. Forgot one. You're going to have to cut that.
Nobody expects you to be perfect, my friend. There we go. Okay, slow down here.
So, got your planetary gear here. Got your speed sensor and 3 hall sensors. Copper wrapping. And this is a brushless gear motor, so you can see all the magnets going around here. So you'll notice in your motors, when you take them apart, you'll have shims. So you want to make sure these shims stay in there. That keeps your motor from wobbling around. And so we're going to take this clip off here. This is probably the hardest part of the whole motor, do the clip off. And underneath these clips there's usually a shim. This one's usually forgotten. You try to take off the planetary gear and you end up tearing this shim up. So, alright, got that one off. And so you'll notice you've got a keyway here. Sometimes these guys are going to slide right off real easy. You'll notice you have a little spot right in there. This is for a gear puller. The gear puller goes on like so. Sometimes they will pull right off like ours. Usually pull off really easy. If it doesn't pull off easy, you will need a gear puller. Make sure you don't lose the key. Now when you're replacing a gear set, that's what they look like. You want to make sure whatever color of grease it has, you want to put the same grease back on. You don't want to put on a white lithium grease when you have a black lithium grease. Some of the big mistakes we see individuals and bike shops making is using the improper grease. We recommend a black lithium, gray lithium, or white lithium, depending on what motor you have. Don't mix greases. We don't recommend that. And do not use SRAM or Shimano derailleur and shifter grease. It's really thin. It's really thin viscosity.
Oh, the viscosity, yeah.
So it causes issues. So definitely recommend a thick grease. Here's some samples of the grease we're using here. So this is a super lithium grease here. You get this from your local auto parts store. And the other mistake we see made is you don't need a whole lot of grease. If you look in here, it's a brand new motor. It doesn't have a whole lot of grease. Not a lot of grease on the gears. If you're just opening up to grease the motor, dime size amount of grease. Maybe a dollop here, maybe a dollop here, no more than that. Over greasing actually is bad. Here's the motor we just took apart and kind of give you a comparison of motors. So this is a freewheel style rear motor. And it's a 350. This is a 500 watt cassette style motor. You can see it's quite a bit bigger. And this is the planetary gear that's in a 350. That's a planetary gear that's in a 500. See, they're significantly larger. We also have a front motor sitting here. You can see it does not have a place to put a freewheel or cassette on it. And it's a little bit smaller than even like a 350 that has a cassette or a freewheel. All right, so we have mid-drive motors. We're going to do a little bit of maintenance on and show. This is a 750 watt. And this is a 350 watt. This is the one we're going to tear apart today. Quite a bit hardware to take off to get into the controllers, the gears to maintenance them. So let's get started. I recommend having a tray to put all the hardware in so you don't want to lose it. All right, on these particular motors, this is an area that's really important to be really careful and not to strip out these screws. You want to get a number 2 Phillips and something pretty skinny. We recommend using a socket wrench to do this so you get some pressure down when you turn. Get them loosened up. Then move to the screwdriver. All right, so before you knock this motor out of here to get to the gear, make sure you take off all the wiring. You don't want to screw up your wiring. And make sure you use the right screwdriver. Number 1. These little tiny screws. This is probably most important to have a tray at this point because you don't want to lose these little tiny ones. And these guys have little lock washers on them. Super small. Easy to lose. Make sure you put them in a tray. We'll go ahead and knock this out. So one thing you want to be really careful with, this wiring is still connected down in here and there's a clip. It's a little caught up and I don't want to rip it out of here because it's kind of caught underneath a few things. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and knock the motor out. So you have this gear right here that connects straight to this motor. This is where you have to start. You can see there's a little center point here. Don't use your good screwdrivers. So you want to use your worst screwdriver or any kind of object that has a point at the end. Just make sure you have it centered. A hammer. You see this motor gear starting to move a little bit. And there's that wire that was kind of caught up. And there's your nylon gear for your motor. Let me get something to cut that. So the maintenance you do on these guys is a little bit of grease on this motor, or this gear of the motor, or you chipped a tooth, you can just replace them. And there are different gears in these motors, so you want to match the same gear you have. It's blue, put a blue gear in it, white gear. Sometimes you'll see brass gears in them. We don't recommend doing the metal gears if they do strip. What ends up happening is it ruins the whole motor. If the nylon gear strip, you just replace the nylon gear and you have no issues with your motor.
Jason, what's the difference between the white and the blue? Does that designate anything, those colors?
Yeah, so this is a older model of nylon gears. This is a new model. They're being manufactured a little bit different today. It's all integrated into one piece and it's a little bit higher quality plastic. The older ones are not integrated as one piece. They're a little bit easier to replace, less expensive, but not as good as the new models.
Let's take a look at this together, can we? And when you say not integrated in one piece, you're talking about the metal parts.
Yeah, the whole gearing system is
right.
integrated, where this guy is not. This piece is separate and slides out separate. This is all press fit together.
Right. Okay.
One thing if you'll notice when you pull these guys out, this little copper washer is lost a lot. You want to make sure you don't lose parts as you're pulling it out. And then you'll notice inside here you have a little pressed bearing. You want to make sure that thing gets pressed back in before you put it back together. Another place that needs lubed is going to be this top side around the big metal gear. So after you lube these up, make sure all the wiring's out of the way. Use the exact same grease it has. And you want to make sure all these wires back here are moved out of the way from the controller. Get lined up the way it was before so you see where the wiring's coming up here. Press it down. And it's not going to go all the way down. You see we're kind of got the gears lined up here. Once you got them fairly lined up, you're just going to push it down as far as you can. And you'll use the screws to get it back down. Alright, so you want to make sure you get all these put in, not cross-threaded or anything. Get them started. So this is how you're going to bring this motor back down. So you're going to kind of go around evenly, do the same amount of turns, and slowly bring it down. You don't want to get it cocked at all because it will catch one side and mess up. Kind of see it as you look around, you'll see the air gap going around. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you see I have too much here and not enough on this side. So let's get that evened up. Alright, so I've got all the way around just touching off. And now I'll start going around really slow, just a quarter turn all the way around to make sure it goes in even. And you'll notice sometimes I'll turn a little bit more if I see one that's not going even. I'll give it a couple more spins. And if it's going in even, you'll notice also it'll go in really smooth and easy. If it gets cocked a little bit, one side will get really difficult to go down. Alright, so once we get it snug, we're going to go back to our socket wrench and just hit them softly. Don't strip them out. And you don't want to use Loctite on these also, because you might want to maintenance it again in the future. Alright, and then we're just going to put all the wiring back together. Make sure you put the phase wires back to the matching colors, so blue to blue, green to green, yellow to yellow. Don't mix them up. All right, one thing you'll notice here, we have a little rubber seal here that waterproofs this guy. And we recommend taking a touch of grease.
Can you show us what you're using?
You could use any of the greases for this, any kind of oil or grease, and just kind of touch off all the way around the seal. Not a lot, but it's a little rubber seal. You want to make sure it seals well. Kind of the same thing you would do with an oil filter in a car. To note, as I'm tightening up these last bolts, these are steel bolts going into steel. You can make them really snug, so you want these really very snug. Have a little bit of Loctite on them even. These are got a little bit of Loctite on them already. But other areas, such as this area here, this is steel going into aluminum with a plastic cap. Don't over tighten these, you'll crack the plastic. On the inside, there's some right here, you got steel going into aluminum. Just make these snug, don't over tighten them. You don't want to ruin the seal, and you also don't want to strip out the aluminum with the steel bolt. So just nice and snug. But here, steel into steel, fine being super tight. Kind of a final thing to say after I put this back together is, if you don't feel comfortable with this, don't try to do it yourself. Go to one of your authorized dealers. A lot of bike shops have the capability to do this. I've done it hundreds of times. Or send it back to the manufacturer. Send it back to us. We'll repair your motor. We'll change out gears. We'll maintenance it if it needs it. And less chances of things getting broken or destroyed. So we did want to touch base on direct drive motors. So kind of show you, this is off a pedicab. And why we see them on pedicabs a lot is because there's no gears. Where a lot of our motors that we do are all geared motors. And by having no gears, like a planetary gear like this, you don't have to worry about stripping of gears. So just want to kind of touch base on this because it's a different style of motor that we use a lot on, someone's taking a lot of loads that's worried about stripping gears. This is a solution. The downside with this type of motor is it doesn't have great torque, and it also is extremely heavy because it has a lot of magnets and copper, a lot of metal, and they tend to be, you can see this is a pretty large diameter motor here. So this thing runs 16 pounds where, this little motor here is 5.5 pounds. So with a little better torque and really great power, still a little tiny motor where this guy, even though there's some advantages, there's also disadvantages.
Jason, we are now going to start talking about the installation of motors.
Yes.
And we're going to kick it off here with this mid-drive. And you're going to show us what you or a dealer perhaps might do to install one of these mid-drives. So let's have a look.
All right, so we've just pulled off the crank and bottom bracket here of the original components. And we're going to slide our motor right back into the bottom bracket. And before we get into all the installation here, you can see the wire we've already ran here. We're going to connect these guys here. Power wires run back to the battery. The battery's mounted here at the T-cycle mount. So we got the speed sensor attached already to right here. One thing you'll notice is there's a little arrow in the center. A lot of people want to attach it over here. And also you see there's spacers here to bring it out. So when you attach these, you may have to add spacers. You want it to be about 3/16 away from the sensor. It's about the furthest you want to be, no closer than a 1/16. So plugging these guys in, and the system is pretty much all hooked up. Turn on the battery. I think I turned off the battery. You'll notice a display here as it turns on. It takes a second to kind of fully light up. During that time, it's actually calibrating. This is Bosch does this, and a lot of other systems I've noticed does the same thing. And one thing important to know about this calibration, if you have your feet on the pedals or riding the bike, it cannot calibrate properly and the system won't run properly. So we could show that again, what's kind of happening. We'll kick it on. And now it's calibrated. So it takes a few seconds, and if you're riding your bike and you kick it on, you're actually got weight on those pedals and moving it, so it's going to calibrate to that weight and not run quite right. It might feel like it has resistance, or it doesn't kick in as you're pedaling because it's needing more pressure to kick on the torque sensor. The next thing you'll notice here is our brakes. So these parking brakes have another wire coming out. This other wire is a safety cutoff. So you pull the brakes, it cuts all power to the motor. So the motor will not activate as the brakes are pulled. Now let's go ahead and show kind of the mounting of this motor.
Okay.
So first you got this little bracket that's going to go on here to clamp it down. So you're going to have these spacers here. So these motors can do a 68 or a 73 millimeter. You just have larger spacers and larger screws. And you'll have a spacer that goes on each side to level everything out. So to get the chain line right, you'll have to move everything a little bit. Special tool to put this on. We recommend a little bit of Loctite. Blue Loctite on this guy here. Now don't tighten it all the way up to start off. We want to get things aligned properly because we're going to put a safety strap on here. So this is our safety strap. What this does is you'll notice the motor can move. And what's going to happen if you start pedaling this thing and it doesn't have a safety strap, it's going to want to kick up. What that will do is pull your wire, bounce this around. So we don't want this motor to move. All right, now that you have it in position, you got the safety strap pulled tight, now you can tighten everything up.
There you have it. Jason, we've had a look at the mid-drive and how you installed that, what it's about. Now we have a hub drive. Let's take a look at how that all comes together.
All right, so we have the built wheel here. So one thing important to notice is we got a lot thicker spokes here. Standard spokes are 14 gauge. These are 12 gauge spokes. One thing when you put an electric hub motor on, you want to have a little beefier spoke. And also you want to have an e-bike rated double-walled rim. Now, a few things you want to know. This guy here is a 500 watt system. We're putting on a Catrike. It's got an 11-speed freewheel on it. And we got an e-bike rated tire. So the things you want to make sure you have straightened out before you put these on, all of the hub motors come with hardware for the axle. You want to make sure you put the hardware on properly, have the correct spacing, have it at 135 to go into the dropouts. This particular Catrike we have has a through axle. So if you notice, this hub motor here has a standard, like a quick release dropout. And with the through axle, what we had to do in this Catrike Max is put a through axle adapter on it so we can go from the through axle to a standard dropout. All right, let's go ahead and slide this motor in here and show you how to hook up the rest of the system. So this is where a 10 millimeter wrench comes in handy. We want to make sure this guy is turned down. So one thing, we want the wire coming down then back up. The reason being is you're going to always have water dripping off the back of this wire. If you have this facing up, water is going to drip down into this opening. And yes, it is sealed, but it is a place where water could get into the motor over time. So better just to be safe than sorry. And you can use a 10 millimeter wrench to line everything up before you drop it in. So hub motors come with these little torque washers. These are very important. Basically what they do is when the motor spins, you got a little bit of torque, adds a little more surface area in the dropout to handle that torque. On the non-drive side, we have a little custom torque arm that we're putting on. So basically it's serving kind of similar purpose what you see on this side, but it's going to attach to the chain stays. So we're going to snug these down a little bit. All right, the next thing is, now the spec on the torque on hub motor is 45 Newton meters. You'll need a torque wrench for this. Yes, you might not have a torque wrench on a trail and you get a flat tire. So have a good idea what that feel is. So when you get a flat tire, you can change it on the trail. But make sure when you get home, make sure you spec it out and get it torqued correctly. Okay, next thing you want to do, we got a little protective cap. This is going to protect the end of the wire. One of the things that could get damaged is the wire coming out of the axle. You're going to protect that as much as possible. All these little wires, these Gillette connectors, you have arrows on them. And you'll notice you have two lines. See the two lines? You gotta get both those all the way in. All right, we have a hub motor installed. So now that we have the hub motor installed, one thing we've already installed on this bike, and we've already ran the wiring. We've installed the throttle here, coming off the shifter with the T-cycle mount, and also another T-cycle mount holding the display. And then this guy here next to the battery, which is also on a T-cycle mount, is a cadence sensor. This is our IPAS. It's an idler pulley pedal assist system. And most hub motors, most standard thing you'll see is a cadence-based sensor like this. You also can do a torque-based system, which entails a little bit more work on a Catrike or any kind of recumbent. I have a Catrike boom here. So you see this wire coming out of the bottom and a hole drilled in the bottom here. This is the torque sensing bottom bracket. So this can replace the cadence base to a torque base, and it hooks up to the exact same system. Now, one thing I forgot to mention, we were discussing this through axle adapter earlier. This is manufactured by Utah Trikes, and I'll work on any Catrike to make the through axle adapter work with our motors. So once you add a throttle to a hub motor, one thing to realize is And we go ahead and put in the pedal assist. This will activate the motor. A safety feature you want to have on a hub motor with the throttle is e-brakes. So I put these parking brakes on. If you're getting on your bike and you hit this, it won't activate. So this is a really important feature. One thing that our systems do is the settings on here. When you turn it on, it'll always go back to 0. So in 0 mode, how this bike is currently set up is the throttle will not work on 0 mode. It's just a normal bike again, but you still want the parking brakes on when you get on and off. So as we mentioned earlier when we were putting on the hub motor, is it had an e-bike tire on it. I wanted to go a little more in depth on that. So this is a Schwalbe Marathon Plus. So the Plus is what you want to look for the e-bike tire. There's a lot of different ratings out there on different tires, and even in Schwalbe of e-bike tires that are rated. And there are also different ratings for different speeds. So make sure when you're getting one that can handle the speed you're going. And some of the benefits you get with them is you get a thicker tire. It's heavier, but you're not as worried because of you're on an e-bike. But I think this is a great thing to consider when you are doing an e-bike.
Okay, Jason, so let's talk about quality assurance for the motors that you make, or anybody makes for that matter. Really an important issue here. How do you make sure that the motors are good to go for the customers?
All right, so every system goes out the door we want to do a quality check on, and how we do that here is we hook every system up and check every component. We see about a 1% failure rate on our testing. We want that be caught here, not on the customer's bike when they're riding down the street 5 minutes after they got their bike. So how we go about that, let's start with the simple things. We hook everything up and we take the display and we're going to program the display to the bike that's going on. This particular bike, it's a tandem, so we're going to program everything out to the correct specs for the bike. So wheel size, make sure that it's in compliance with the current laws, so 20 miles an hour max speed with the throttle, and make sure that it won't go any faster than 28 miles an hour on the pedal assist. All that's mainly controlled through the controller, won't allow it to go past 28 miles an hour, but we still want it programmed on the display. And little things that we'll do on here is like this L4 settings, 20 minutes before it shuts off automatically. So if you pull in your garage, you don't have it on all night. A few other settings on here, it's 48 volts, so we want to make sure the system knows it's hooked up to 48 volt, how fast we want the pedal assist to activate, how much power we want to be running through the system's amps wise. We can adjust that. So a lot of little settings we can do on the display. So after that's set, we'll start here with the pedal assist. We have the pedal assist hooked up. This is a cadence-based pedal assist, and we're going to make sure it just activates. So that's activated. It's working properly. Next, we'll check the throttle. And as I was mentioning, 20 miles an hour max on the throttle. Move to the e-brakes. When you pull these brakes, it'll cut all power to the motor, and you'll see a little line here and a circle pop up. Check both brakes. So all the wiring we pulled for this bike is for a tandem. So we got to make sure all the wire lengths are the correct length. And then next we're going to go ahead and check the wheel. So this wheel's already been trued. Then we're going to move up this brake to the wheel. And this is how we're going to apply the torque. Work pretty good. So we're going to activate this guy. We're going to just apply the brakes. Run that wattage up. And if it's going to fail, it's going to fail really quick. It typically, no more than a minute. We'll hold it and run that wattage all the way up to whatever its peak power is, and make sure nothing pops or goes bad.
Well, let's talk about the assurance, the quality assurance of the batteries themselves. What do we have here?
Yeah, so pull the battery off the controller here. And this is the controller. The brains for the whole system is hidden underneath here. And this is a display. A lot of people get these two intermixed. One thing in our quality checks, if this guy gets really warm, we know that there's some issues. So there's usually a quality check on every single system where we just make sure that these aren't getting warm in our testing. So let's go a little bit deeper into the battery. So the battery testing, every battery is UL certified now, coming from EBO. And besides the UL certification, we get a certification letter from LG showing that the individual cells were tested. Then they go to the pack manufacturer that solders or welds all the cells together and puts it into the case. And that case gets UL certified. And they come here, and every single battery goes out the door here. We test again. Let's go take a look at the testing station.
Why do you need to certify batteries? What's the big deal anyways?
Well, there's a lot of batteries being manufactured improperly, and it's a good safety factor to make sure that the batteries are being made correctly. I'm sure everybody watching this has heard of all the battery fires. We do tend to see that battery fires are more related to chargers, improper chargers, wrong voltage chargers, but the batteries themselves can actually catch on fire if they're made improperly.
Why don't you tell us a little about the equipment? There's a lot of interesting stuff I see sitting on the shelf here. How do you go about testing these batteries with this equipment? What is it?
The bottom units here are battery condition testers. This is a system we've been using since we started EBO. And we're phasing them out and moving to a Wisconsin company, these computerized battery analyzers. We've got these 2 years ago and been testing the batteries with those, making sure we're happy with the testers as we're phasing out the old ones. So right now we can test 8 batteries at a time. And these testing, what they do for us is it gives us a lot of information. I can kind of show you a little bit of that. So what you're seeing right here, this graph is kind of a simulation bike ride. So peaks and valleys. So you can see the ups and downs. So you're going up a hill, down a hill on a flat. And we're running down the battery, trying to simulate a bike ride. So basically this bike ride is about an hour and a half, actually a little more than an hour and a half of a ride. And we're hitting the battery pretty hard. And what we want to see with this, if there's any kind of problems with the batteries, we want to catch them before they go out the door. Even though they're UL certified, that you're talking about a manufacturing plant welding battery cells together, you might have a bad weld and those type of things we can catch here before they go out the door. The LG cells we buy, they first get verified with LG. Each cell gets tested. We get verification information on every cell. Then they go to the battery manufacturer, the case manufacturer that puts it into the case for us. Now this is where the UL comes into play. So UL certifies that battery built into the case. So the final battery. What we're doing is just verifying safety of it basically a third time. Kind of some of the stuff we do on the testing for our mid-drive motors. We can't hook every single one of these up to a bike and go for a ride and make sure everything works properly. So some of the solutions we have is we do RPM tests on every single motor. Roughly we want it to be anywhere from about 95 to 100 RPM, and with the right gear ratio, that'll put you about 25 miles an hour. So this one's running 95.6, 96. So this one's in spec. So that's the first test we do. The next test we do is we take this whole motor and we're going to stick it into a demo bike that's on a mount and activate the torque sensor, make sure the torque sensor activates properly. So let's do that next. Should have gloves on.
Okay, now we have Nick with us from EBO. Nick, hi, welcome.
Hi guys, thanks for having me.
All right, tell us a little bit about the test that we're going to look at here.
So we've set this bike up in this stand to test our mid-drive motors. One thing that we want to test is making sure that our torque sensor, so when you put pressure down on the pedals, you're torque activating it. So we've installed this on this bike, and we just have a little chain tensioner. We got a chain line going. We have a brake set up to this wheel, because with our hands, we're not going to be able to feel this activate. It's not, I don't have enough strength in my arms. There's not a road I'm pushing against. So we hit the brake, and then I can push, and I can hear and feel that this torque sensor is working. And I know that when we ship it to a customer, they're going to get a working motor. Another thing you might notice is when I was doing this is you can kind of hear this whirring, since I don't have another arm or leg to put down on the other pedal, creating like an even torque, which is kind of a reason why, if you're maybe in a situation where you have one leg or something and you're biking, we have a customer who didn't like a mid-drive for that reason. If you don't have a perfect even cadence, it can feel weird to you and kind of create a pulsating effect, which might be why you'd want to go to a hub motor with a cadence-based torque or a pedal assist. Yeah. But this is how we test that. We can also test our throttle here if you're going that route, and just make sure it's spinning our motor, so we know everything's operational.
Guys, we have Dustin with us now to explain another test. We're going back to the hub motor on this one, and we're looking for faults, Dustin?
Yep, so this device here, it'll kind of tell us what's going on inside the motor. So these lights here are for the Hall sensors, and then these ones here are for the phase wires. So this motor here, actually, you'll see only 5 of those 6 lights we're looking for lighting up. So we know this one has a Hall sensor out right there, the green one. And so that'll allow us to kind of test out all that stuff. So if it's not working, we can kind of get in there and see what's wrong with it without actually taking it apart.
And so if there is something wrong, would you just return it, or would you actually work on it again?
Sometimes we will work on them. Sometimes it's just not worth it. The parts are so tiny in there, and it doesn't cost that much to replace just a whole thing sometimes. So it just depends.
Okay. Very good. Thanks a lot. Jason, we have one last test to talk about here, and it has to do with sound, huh?
Yeah, so we have a lot of people concerned about how noisy motors can be. So one thing we do check, it's not something we do frequently because we can tell as we're testing motors if they sound loud or not. Probably one motor out of a batch we may test, and we just use a simple dB tester. So right now with the heater running above us, we're running as high as about 50. With us talking, we're hitting about 70. So it'll give you an idea of levels. Right now, you and I discussing this, we're hitting 70 dB. So we're going to run a motor to kind of show what a mid-drive and a hub motor dB levels look like. So it looks like we're about as loud as what we were talking. Now, obviously, it could get a little higher with road noise and things like that. What we see is our motors run about 70, 75. We see cassettes, hub bodies, with the clicking they make when you're going down the road, run about 80. So our motors typically run quieter than your drivetrains running. So let's go look at a hub motor also. So we're going to check the dB of a motor just running on a stand. So it's not on the road. There's no road noise. There's no drivetrain noise. It's just, no torque on it at all. So we're going to run this and check it.
Hold it up nice and high.
So we're running about 60. When I talk, I can talk louder than the noise coming from the motor. One other test that we run is we do a torque test on our motors. We don't do this on every motor. This is done on one out of each batch, just to verify that batch of motors is the correct torque. So this is a 350. The minimum on these guys is 45 Newton meters. They tend to all run quite a bit more around the 50 range. So all these checks have to be done on the batches to make sure that they are producing what we're claiming they're producing.
Okay, and so how does that work?
So on these guys, basically we have all these little devices that we hook up to the axle, and we lock the axle in place, and we hook this guy into the axle, and we run the motor, clamp the brake, and that runs up the torque right here.
So read it out, and that's it.
Yeah.
So that's going to conclude our visit here to EBO. I want to thank Jason and Dustin and Nick for showing us around. We learned so much today, guys. It was really interesting to see what you had to show us. So thanks for having us here.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Yeah, it's fantastic having you here.
Okay. All right, guys, and there is Jason live with us to answer your questions, respond to any comments you have. Jason, thanks so much for the tour and all that great in-depth look into all those motors, and thanks for joining us live today.
Hello, everyone.
All right, so Jason, we do have quite a few questions here. Let's dive into it. I may group a couple of them, but let's start out with my buddy Jim Pratt's question. He wants to know, he saw all this stuff that you were doing. How much time does it take you to go through the entire process, your testing and assembly, packaging it up and shipping it? How much time does that take?
Myself, I could get about, when I was shipping out a lot of systems myself, I was doing about 13 a day. The guys that work for me are doing about 16 a day max. So they're doing about a 6-hour to 8-hour days. So we get out quite a few.
All right. You mentioned when you were talking about the lubricants that you use, the white and the black lithium grease. And Jim also wanted to know about the difference between the two of them. If they're the same, you mentioned the viscosity was about the same. Why would you choose one or the other? I think you did mention something about sticking to what was already in there. What do you think about that?
A lot of times the greases that we're using are more determined on what we have available at the time and the particular motor we're using it on. The reason, I don't know all the chemistry behind using different greases mixed, but there's a lot of information out there from the grease manufacturers saying don't mix the grease. And I can't go into all the details of why that is, but it is listed on a lot of the packaging.
All right. You made a big point about putting a little container of some kind or other for all the small parts as you tore that apart, which is very obvious to anybody who watched what you did there. Mike says it sounds like he wants different small parts trays for all the maybe the different screws and washers, so you can be a little bit more organized. Do you think that's necessary?
Yes, if you're working on a lot of different motors in the same location. If you're working on one motor, I think it's pretty obvious which nuts and bolts you're working with. If you could remember, might not be a bad idea to take some pictures as you're going.
Okay. And Daryl Jordan has a couple of questions. I'm going to kind of put them together here. He wants to know, well, actually, it's a suggestion, and I think it's a good one. Maybe we could have spent a little bit more time talking about each of the parts. We talked about the gear and the motors, some of the parts, but I think he would have liked to seen a little bit more detail on those. So maybe next time we talk, we can do something like that. But here's a more general question. So we saw what you had to do to those motors. Do you have a suggestion for how often you should be doing this, maintaining these motors, stripping them down and such?
This is a fully loaded question. The specs are for most motor manufacturers run about 1,000 miles. But we all know that very few of us pull our motor off and maintenance them at 1,000 miles. We see customers getting up to 5,000 plus before we see them come in our door to get maintenance. We actually had a customer that did 15,000 miles before he wanted to get it greased. So it really depends on the customer. If you're just on paved trails around your neighborhood, nothing too serious, no gravel roads, no mountain biking up single track, your motor could, with those conditions, might be needed to be maintenance more often. But if you're on easy trails, you might be able to push it off quite a bit longer.
All right, and let's just finish up the last one here with from Daryl. Yeah, how do you know you put it back right? It's so complicated, all those little pieces and parts. Have you ever put one together and then found there's a part or two left in that little tray, and you went, hmm?
Yes, that little copper bearing um, that I pointed out in the mid-drive motor that gets put back together, and we see it sitting in that tray and have to pull it back apart. That's happened a few times.
Okay. Cora Moose, no torque value for those. I think this comment, Jason, came in when you were talking about the proper torque on the screws when you put the motors back together. This was before we saw your torque wrench when you were actually installing the hub motor and tightening down the wheel. So you talked a little bit about the feel for it. Is there a need for a torque value when you're putting the motors back together?
Yeah, some of those torque values you can find on our webpage in the manuals.
Okay, and then you'd know those as well. Good. All right, my buddy Kevin Ludestack wants to know, do you recommend a fire-resistant bag to store the batteries in? So yeah, you did mention all the battery fires that people are concerned about and the quality control that you guys provide to make sure that nothing goes wrong. But is that a recommendation you would make?
Not necessarily. I guess if you're buying your battery from kind of an unknown source on Amazon, eBay, or Alibaba or something, you might consider that. I do recommend, not plugging your battery and just leaving it sitting for days. I recommend plugging in and unplugging it once it's charged, and keep an eye on it. I don't think anyone can guarantee a 100% safety, and we do our best to make sure everything's safe. So, I don't necessarily say I wouldn't do it, but I don't think, if you're getting from a Bosch or EBO or, any major company there, I don't think should be a big worry.
All right. Here's one from John Johnson. On the mid-drive, can you change the newer intergrade gear on the motor with the older two-piece gear? Are they interchangeable?
If you have the old blue gear, you can change the out to the white gear, no problem. Probably go the other direction, the white gear to the blue gear. You won't have all the parts.
Okay. And then just a couple more here. So, my friend Linda Tolley, what's your best battery and e-assist setup you found thus far? So, that's kind of a loaded question for you. I'm going to guess you're going to want to recommend the EBO battery systems and motors, but maybe we'll and answer that any way you like, of course, Jason. But maybe we want to widen this out just a little bit here without getting too deep into the weeds. How would you go about recommending to someone looking for e-assist? What choices, what thoughts should be going through their head as they're looking for their e-assist? How should they choose?
I recommend trying out everything. I mean, we may not be the best system for you. Every individual has a preference of how they like to ride. We'll have people ride a torque sensing motor thinking that's what they want. And they'll jump on a cadence-based system and discover that they prefer it much more. So, and even if you have a medical condition, you might find if one or the other different types of systems you prefer. You may like a Bosch system, how it feels more than our system, or you might like our system better than the Bosch system, or any other system that's in the market. So if you're going to spend the money and time looking at an e-system for your Trike, try them all out. Make sure you find the one that you like the best.
Good. All right. There's my pal Alv Henriksen, and Alva is asking about the Befang, or talking about the Befang. He's actually a bike dealer in Sweden. Personally, I'm fascinated by how far you can ride a Befang without having to service it. I've never serviced my motor; it's been going for many years. But it might be time to order spare parts. He's maybe running his chances a little high there. What do you think?
This is, a question we get a lot, and I'm as guilty as probably most of our customers. I actually have only pulled my motor out once and serviced it, and I probably have 15,000 miles on it. So, um, you know, kind of rule of thumb, if it starts sounding really noisy or something's going on with it, you definitely want to get it maintenance. You can tell if it gets louder over time that it's time to, maintenance it.
All right. And then let's finish up with Mark Harris. Mark had a lot to say on the chat today. He's very knowledgeable when it comes to motors and trikes and bikes. When needed, I'll send my motors to EBO for rebuilding. So, are you welcoming that actually? So, if someone wants to have you take a look at their motors, is that okay?
Yes, of course. We probably have a couple in a week that we'll re-grease and send back out.
Good. All right. I think, let me look back to the live. Okay, Daryl's got one last question. Let's finish up with that. When would you use a front wheel drive versus a rear wheel drive? I assume he's talking about a mid drive versus a hub drive. Go ahead, and if you want to take a crack at that one.
There's a lot of reasons. One thing with the when you take a hub motor, it's kind of instant power. So if you want to shoot across the street on a busy traffic street, no problem. It runs independently from your drivetrain. So if something ever happens with your drivetrain, you still have a throttle to be able to get home or whatever you want. We see a lot more hub motors used in the adaptive world for people, with different disabilities over a mid drive. Mid drive, the advantages with it, you're running independently of your drivetrain. So you could really take advantage of really high torque when you're in your lower gears. And then when you go up to your higher gears, you get your speed, obviously, but not as good of torque. It really is a preference for the customer.
Okay, and if he had two bikes, one with a 20-inch front wheel, can he switch wheels between bikes? I think he means hubs. Peter, you were trying to clarify this. Did you have a comment about
well, yeah, the question about when would you use a front wheel drive instead of a rear wheel drive, I don't think he's talking about mid drive. I think he's talking about a front hub motor. Mm-hmm. And I noticed when you did the walk through the shop, there was a Delta Trike there, which I assume had a front hub motor on it. So that would be the reason in my mind, would be because you had a Delta Trike. Or some people might find it easier. Like suppose the guy says, I've got two bikes with 20-inch front wheels. Well, it's going to be easier to swap out front wheels than rear wheels because there's no chain. You don't have to get the derailleur. Well, mine's an 8-speed. That's a 7-speed. It's the front wheel. Who cares? They're all 100 millimeter width. So swapping out front hubs should be easier than swapping out rear wheels. What do you think about that, Jason?
I agreed. We actually have a situation now where we have a guy doing touring, and he prefers doing a front motor because it's less complicated. And if something happens to his drivetrain, he still has a throttle to get to wherever he's going. And the weight, he's putting a lot of weight in the back of his bike. So all that weight on a non-motored wheel that he's built custom for the handle all that weight, and less weight in the front on the drivetrain. So there's so many reasons to go for a front motor. One's just simplicity.
So my bike is I have an e-bike. It's an old Burley long wheelbase 2-wheel Recumbent, and it has rear suspension. Picked it up cheap at an auction, so that was cool. I thought, well, that'd be a great bike for off-road. So I put a direct drive hub motor in the back and 2-inch tires. And I pump the tires fairly low, and I climb, I go up in the dirt roads where there's no traffic and there's lots of hill. I see more deers than cars. It's nice. So if I put a front wheel motor on that, there's not that much weight on the front wheel of most Delta Trikes or long wheelbase Recumbents. So you might spin the tire in a dirt road climb, wouldn't you?
You would.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Now some trikes, like a cat weasel, has very little front wheel weight, and that would probably be a pretty poor application for a front wheel drive. I mean, people do wheelies with them, so they're pretty low front weight.
Yeah, we do a lot of adaptive stuff with cat weasels with the front motor.
Okay. Okay.
I think it really is, dependent on the situation and what the person's riding when it comes to some of these bikes.
Well, okay, an adaptive person might be more likely to ride pavement and not steep gravel hills and stuff. So, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
That makes good sense. On pavement, traction shouldn't be a problem hardly at all, I would think, with a front wheel motor. And on a diamond frame bike, I don't think it would be a problem at all. There's typically enough wheel weight there.
Yeah.
Maybe on a steep climb on gravel, it might be.
Okay. All right, Peter, thanks for your thoughts on that. Let's finish up. I got one last really good question from Daryl Jordan, and it's, what if he has more questions? And we were going to get to this anyways, Daryl. So, yeah, Jason, let's finish up with how people can contact you. We're going to put this in the description below, of course. But if folks want to find out more information about EBO or have questions that we didn't answer today, how can they contact you?
You can call us at our office during the winter hours. We're Tuesday through Friday, 10 o'clock to 5 o'clock, or you can email us at any point. We'll usually get back to you within the day or same day.
Good. And we'll put your phone number in there too then, and the email address and the website, so you won't have any trouble getting a hold of Jason then, guys. So Jason, thanks again so much for all this great information and the time you spent with us. Very much appreciated. I hope the audience got a lot out of that. I know Larry and I did while we were there. So you take care, pal. We'll be in touch.
All right, thanks, Gary.
Okay, we'll see ya. All right, folks, let's move along here and talk about our sponsors once more. We're going to kick it off with our first sponsor, our oldest sponsor. It's TerraCycle. Riding comfort, style, and laid-back bliss. At TerraCycle, we've been laid back since 1996. See more at t-cycle.com. And Trailside Trikes. If you find yourself in Florida near the Withlacoochee Trail, check out Andrew's shop and amazing crew. And TerraTrike Green Speed. The best in leisure, performance, adventure, touring, electric, and portability. Wherever your adventure leads, TerraTrike will take you there. And Greenspeed, where Ian Sims designs bring performance through science and engineering. And Laid Back Cycles, the top USA dealer for TerraTrike and the premier source for Catrike, Ice, and Greenspeed. We give you the freedom to ride. And Bicycle Man, where you can find new and used recumbent trikes and bikes. We're located in Alfred Station, New York, and have over 100 bents in stock and ready to try. So why wait? Come, ride, then decide. And AZUB. The team at AZUB is proud to offer the latest 5th generation Bosch Performance CX motor. The CX offers 250 watts of nominal power, but up to 600 watts of maximum power and 85 Newton meters of torque. The optional dual battery system has an impressive range of up to 200 miles. The crew at AZUB is also excited about the possibility of linking the electronic shifting of the roll-off gearbox, something that no other motor but Bosch allows. To learn more about all this, visit azub.eu and feel free to configure your dream bike. And Connecticut Yankee Peddler. We feature multiple brands of trikes, including electric assist models. Test rides and Southern Iowa hospitality are always available at our megastore in Cheriton. And Stein Trikes. Fully suspended and with 4 inches of travel over each wheel, our colorful trikes will have you gliding over rocks and curbs with ease. Wild one, I think I love you. Check out stein-trikes-us.com to learn more. And Rad Innovations. Rad Adaptive will be hosting the Trike Alley at the Philly Bike Expo. We will have recumbent trikes, hand cycles, and tandems from Honza, AZUB, Ice, Catrike, Rad, and more. All ages and abilities are welcome. Okay, guys, first announcement, our next show, which is going to be March 9th at our regular 2 p.m. Eastern Time slot. So we hope you'll join us then. We are working on some very interesting topics for you. So keep an eye open on Facebook for those announcements. I also wanted to let you know about the Catrike family tour. No, the factory tour coming up here February 22nd from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Now, Trey and I were there last year, had a wonderful time. Mark Egland here sent me a notice about the one coming up here this month, and we unfortunately aren't going to be able to make it this year. But if you are anywhere around Orlando, or if you happen to be planning to visit that area in that time period, you can look for great trail rides, the tours of the factory, and just a great time there. So you can register at catrike.com/factory tour. So we hope you will show up there if you can. And we mentioned the Philly Bike Expo. I was talking to David Black, and he and Rad Innovations are our new sponsor. And David mentioned the Philly Bike Expo that they are going to attend with those bikes and trikes. Here are the details. March 8th through 9th, 10 to 5 on Saturday, 10 to 4 on Sunday. You can get tickets at phillyBikeExpo.com. And yeah, Rad's going to be there. David is putting together what he calls the Trike Alley. So he's going to be representing a few different brands there, as we mentioned. He's going to have adaptive bikes. He's going to have some fittings and assessments for folks if you show up, and lots of interesting demos. So yeah, hit the Philly Bike Expo if you're anywhere in that region next month. All right, let's finish up with the quiz. Let me look. I did have some answers here. To remind you, Trey, go ahead. Yeah, thanks. Pop that back up there. So the question was, what's unusual about this Catrike Dumont, and what do they use it for? So what's unusual about it? We had 3 people give the correct answer. Ed Retzler, yes. 2 motors. Kevin, yes. Dual battery and dual motors. That's even a little bit more precise. And a pedelec drive and a rear hub drive. So yes, 2 motors. So the only answer I didn't get is what it's used for. This is really kind of tough. So yeah, Kirk put this on because people wanted to test ride. They want to test ride a mid-drive, or they wanted to test ride a hub motor. And so, of course, that took at least 2 trikes to try out. So with this particular setup, folks at Angletech checking out the motors could try out a hub drive, or they could try out the mid drive on this, or they could actually kick both motors in with this system and go for a crazy ride. So thanks again to Kelvin for showing Larry and I around and seeing some interesting things there at Angletech a couple of weeks ago. So Ed and Kevin and Mike, good job. That was close to the right answer. So, all right, let's find out how you can support the Laid Back Bike Report as we wind it down today. Well, you can like us on Facebook, you can subscribe to us on YouTube, and you can click that little white eye up there, and that will take you to the laidbackbikereport.com website. Find out lots more there. Our past shows, future shows, you can listen to our audio podcast that we have listed there. You can buy a hat to support us, or you can become a Patreon member like all these fine folks here. You can do so for as little as $1 a month. All right, so let's bring what's left of the crew back on. Great job, guys. Thanks so much for putting that a little bit more complicated show together, Larry and Trey. And Peter, it's great to have you back with us again. Always looking for your insights, and you're always willing to provide them. So we appreciate that, pal. All right, guys. So I appreciate the crew. I really appreciate all of you joining us this month and every month here on the Laid Back Bike Report. So until our next webcast, from all of us here at the Laid Back Bike Report, so long, Bent Riders.